area, and it's still in its infancy.
Okay, we have a few more minutes before we wrap up. If anybody has any other questions for the panelists, we could take them. Jameson?
Sure. I'll try that. All right, so the bill defines monetary value as a medium of exchange, whether or not redeemable in money. And from some of the definitions you were using prior, it sounds like that transmission would cover any type of value being converted to another type of value, even if you're pure digital to digital, crypto to crypto. Is that correct?
That is correct. Understanding that the office has the resources that it has, you know, that's not intended to cover Second Life. What are they like? Yeah, Linden dollars. Thank you. Yes. That's not intended to get those type of gamer credits, and you can see that, I believe, reflected in the stored value definition.
So, on a related note, so these cryptocurrencies actually, allow for denominations that are like a millionth of a penny that a normal human would not consider value, but the machine or whatever program you're using does consider it value. It's just an entry in this data store. So, if, for example, I've had friends write bots that are transferring these millions of pennies back and forth, either doing arbitrage or doing other programmatic crypto magic. So I'm just wondering whether or not, sort of going back to some of the minimum threshold questions that were asked earlier, if you're transferring a millionth of a penny, is that still money transmission, according to the law?
If you're in the business of moving a millionth of a penny.
Right.
That's your business model is moving money.
Your colleague has answered your question.
If you're taking a trillionth of a penny out of a millionth of a penny,
if that's your business,
that's your profit margin, then it's still considered money.
Well, I think it's considered money because, yes, a trillionth of a million has no intrinsic value, but 200 billion of those do. So, and then the other thing which really sort of covers your question before was also what's not being discussed is the charging of a fee. You may not be
a service.
You may not be. Your business model may not fall within the realm of being a monthly transmitter, but if all of a sudden you're charging a fee for this, then maybe it does. So let's not forget the other half of it.
Yeah, so I'll also ask the question, what is the purpose of these microtransactions?
Right.
So if you're running a microtransaction because you're hashing a birth certificate, the financial piece is ancillary.
Right.
So hopefully that would not be money transmission.
Right. We have a question from Robert.
Yeah, I was just kind of wondering, when this bill was crafted, what industry experts in Bitcoin and blockchain technology were consulted, and how long did this discussion go on? Was it an internal committee? Was it external? Can we get some sort of information on that? And I know you mentioned industry requested features, in this bill. Where did that come from?
Okay, thank you. So to address your first question, I think the stakeholders that were consulted, I believe was your question. We started this process back in May of 2013, and we convened what was essentially government-only participants, and that's where it started. So we spoke to the Department of Revenue, the SBI, the Securities Commission, the Attorney General's office, and a variety of other actors just internally before we did anything at all. After that point, we started working on rules, and we invited every stakeholder that we could think of, and it went from the Money Services Roundtable to various applicants who had applied for licensure with us. to the North Carolina Bar Association to the extent that anybody there had any experience. We invited consumer advocates as well. We had a number of lawyers that had represented different payment processors that we invited. So overall, we had a list of, I think it was 170 different stakeholders that we were speaking to. And unfortunately, at the time, we weren't aware of the Chamber of Digital Commerce to invite them as well. But we did try as best we could to cover the waterfront of the actors that we were aware of.
Okay, so we have a couple of our panelists have to catch a flight, so we're going to wrap it up with some closing statements. And just for now, from our panelists, let's just wrap it up with where we think the future here is going with Bitcoin 2.0 in North Carolina and nationally. And if you could just provide some closing statements.
Just quickly, I think eventually technology always wins out. How long it will take, it's hard to say. The decisions or how Bitcoin goes is up to you folks.
Closing statement, this is fun. I didn't prepare one. I think from the Chamber's perspective, when we are working with policymakers, and we do a lot of work on the federal level, and now we're also getting engaged with a lot of the states as well, the first piece that we always point out is making a distinction between the currency and the protocol, Bitcoin versus the blockchain. And if you're able to divide the two of those and make a distinction between the currency itself and the power of the blockchain, you're probably in the top 1% of knowledge of the probably American people that are able to understand what Bitcoin is. In addition, I would also say that there is immense power in the blockchain. This is truly transformative technology. It's a change agent. It's going to change every area of every market that we are engaged with today. It is in everybody's interest that we get these regulatory, public policy, government affairs issues right. And I do think that I am, well, one, very optimistic, because I do think the technology is powerful and we will be able to overcome these issues. And I think there will be a day when we look back and we won't remember what life was like before Bitcoin and the blockchain. So with that, I would say stay optimistic, continue to work with your regulators, your policymakers. These guys have very open ears, and I think they're dedicated to getting this right as well. So thank you all for coming and participating in this. The public policy process is extremely important. There's a lot of very big think issues we're working on. Multi-sig is really one of the more difficult ones. That's just one example. And there's all sorts of business models that have the opportunity to grow and change the way that we do a multitude of different types of transactions and functions and really our way of life.
I would like to say thank you for leaving your spears in your cars. We are also excited about blockchain, but our regulatory mission in this state is to ensure that consumers are protected from loss of substantial of their assets through improper means, let's say. And that is where, that forms the background of our perspective here. As regulators, we are intimately well-versed with history in this country, and during which time banks, during periods of time in which financial institutions were unregulated and almost collapsed our nation's economy. So that forms the basis of our perspective, and we hope that we've managed to balance that against what we perceive as a very innovative technology.
I would just add that, I think we all know that government and innovation don't always align and don't always, reach the end of the race together. But I don't think that regulation has to be a barrier. I think it's just something that has to be navigated, and I think especially as it appears due to what may look like the legislation not moving in the next through this session, an opportunity for more stakeholder involvement in what this legislation could evolve to be. And so I would encourage all of you, especially because North Carolina will be, looks like it will be the first state to go, to be engaged in the process, because this will be the model for other states. And so North Carolina is working to get it right. And I come from DC, I worked on Capitol Hill, where a lot of regulators, they don't sit in the room and take questions. And they just make decisions, and you have to just go with them. So you're very fortunate to be in a state that is after hours coming out and listening to stakeholders and to the constituency and answering questions about what's happening in a very important and growing industry.
I just want to close by saying thank you very much. Very, very informative. We appreciate your time in traveling here and spending time with, well, you didn't travel that far. But thank you anyway for coming. So, from Charlotte, Washington to Washington, they travel a long way. So, would you please give them a hand and thank them as well? With that, this meetup is over. You'll hear more from us through the meetup communications. Thank you very much for coming. I hope this was helpful.